You're not just learning to write, but you're writing to learn.
Hello, fans of SRSD. My name is Randy Barth from SRSD Online and Writing to Learn. You're watching the SRSD Mentor Series, helping you change student lives forever. This episode is on how SRSD reading strategies dramatically improve student writing skills. SRSD is the leading research-based method for teaching reading and writing to learn. For our episode today, we have two SRSD experts. Please welcome Steve Graham. Steve is a SRSD researcher at Arizona State University and is also known for his advisory roles with the National Writing Project and the What Works Clearinghouse. And Aslhey Barkel. Aslhey is a SRSD research assistant and special education teacher also at Arizona State University. Aslhey, tell us about the SRSD Reading Strategy TWA and how it helps students with writing, but also how it helps on the state standards.
With the Common Core State Standards, a lot of students in elementary school are being asked to use source text, and many of them have not been trained to actually read a text to find information that they'll then use in their writing. So it's really helpful when they're trying to master that standard. So TWA is a reading strategy that can be incorporated into the SRSD framework. So TWA takes it a step further by using source text or informational text and teaching students how to take facts and pieces of information from that text as well as information from their own ideas in order to create a stronger persuasive essay. So you're combining the writing strategies along with this reading strategy, TWA. And we had some interviews with students, 2 years teaching students using TWA and SRSD. They thought the tricks were very helpful to help them become stronger writers and write stronger opinion essays.
You were also talking to me earlier about some fun SRSD reading tips. What have you seen that works?
One thing I'm thinking of that came up is the use of highlighter. Some teachers wanted to use highlighters with their students, and other teachers knew their students too well and knew that that would be an issue. So I guess knowing your students and the tool you want to use when they actually mark text. I know the students really liked the analogy of thinking of TWA and if a pilot is flying their plane too fast or too slow and how that kind of relates to your reading speed. Another thing that I saw a teacher doing is she created hand motions for her students for each step, pointing to her head or pointing like she was reading a book or making like a book motion with her hand, kind of go along to help them with the SRSD stage memorize it.
Thanks, Aslhey. Now let's turn our attention to the recommendations taken from the What Works Clearinghouse webinar. Steve tells us how reading and writing strategies help students advance their learning skills in both reading and writing.
I want to really emphasize that these recommendations are appropriate for not just English teachers, but biology, chemistry, math, social studies, and so forth. So when we use writing to think about reading, we're focused in on the emphasis of writing and reading to make a difference in writing. Now, why would we recommend something like this? Well, one of the primary reasons is that when you think about reading and writing, although they differ, the pools of knowledge on which they draw have a lot of similarities in them in terms of strategies, knowledge, and skills to create meaning. So if students are writing on a particular topic in a social studies class, we want to point out that they draw upon their previous knowledge to help them understand what they're reading. When they write about the same knowledge, they're drawing on those same sources to gather ideas. We also want to use a variety of written exemplars to highlight the key features of text. So in terms of thinking about helping students make that connection between writing and reading to facilitate writing, there's a sentence starter strategy here that's presented. And I want you to think about this if you're an English teacher and you were working on something like reading The Great Gatsby. So in terms of revising meaning, you might have students use sentence starters where they think, at first I thought X about The Great Gatsby, but now I think, or my latest thought about, or I'm getting a different picture here because, and reflecting and relating. The big idea is, a conclusion I'm drawing is, the most important message is, But the basic idea here is that we use these sentence starters to help us both reading and writing about a particular topic. Another example in terms of helping students use reading to facilitate their writing is using editorials as peer and professional exemplars for students' own persuasive text. So we can read the editorials or some other type of persuasive text to identify the specific features of the editorial. We can also ask students then to reread multiple editorials to take a look to see what makes them effective. And we can do this by having both strong examples and weaker examples so that they get a sense of how those particular elements play out. Then we can ask students to write their own editorials using those same basic elements. And then just as importantly, we want to have students discuss those features with each other, places where they might want to make changes in terms of the use of those features to make their editorial even stronger and more relevant for the audience.
Next, let's hear about some of the big issues you might experience when teaching reading strategies to improve writing.
I'd love to say there's no obstacles to doing any of these, but often what we hear is from content area teachers, I don't teach reading or writing. That's not my responsibility. And so there's considerable evidence that when you have students write about what they read, it improves performance. And that's the case even with fairly simple writing activities, writing responses to homework questions, taking notes, generating your own questions for something that you've read. Another thing is that this should be a school effort, so that if we're introducing an approach to writing persuasively, where that general basic approach is used across the classrooms, but then the teacher individualizes it for their particular content area to make it more relevant, because what counts for a relevant detail in English, science, and social studies is likely to differ, and each of those content areas has their own specialized way of how to make an argument, but a general frame can provide a starting point for doing that.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Aslhey. If you'd like to ask them more about how SRSD Reading Strategies improves writing, email us at info@srsdonline.com. Right now, let's hear from SRSD creator Dr. Karen Harris on the value of SRSD's Close Reading Strategy, TWA, and its benefit on student writing. Take it away, Karen.
TWA is an excellent close reading strategy that was developed by Linda Mason and her colleagues to improve reading comprehension, and has been researched from elementary grades through high school grades by changing it, scaling it a little down, scaling it a little bit up. It stands for think before reading, think while reading, and think after reading. And each of those major thinks or think-abouts has bullets under it. And those bullets can vary depending on exactly what it is the student is learning to read, the type of text, or the purpose for the reading. The brilliance of Linda Mason's work was combining what we know about powerful reading comprehension, about what helps readers understand and integrate the text that they're reading. And TWA gave us a powerful reading strategy that could be linked to any of the genres. You can read to help you prepare to write a narrative. You can read to help you to prepare to write to persuade, and you can read to help you prepare to write to explain or to inform. It is indeed one of those strategies that brings together years of research on reading comprehension and makes it accessible to teachers and students.
Thanks, Karen. Now let's look at another reading strategy, TRAP, research by Dr. Jessica Hagaman.
I'll start by saying TRAP is a modified version of the paraphrasing strategy from KU. We know that good readers don't start with just reading. Anytime you're going to read something, even a newspaper, a good reader is going to look at the title, they're going to maybe look at pictures, they're going to know that they're interested because they saw something about whatever it is they're reading. So that's kind of the pre-steps of reading. So the entire strategy, as the acronym is TRAP, which stands for think before you read, or think about what you're about to read, and then read paragraph by paragraph, which is breaking down that large task of reading for students who maybe need help breaking down the task. And then ask yourself what's the main idea and 2 details about that paragraph. And then P, put it into your own words or paraphrase, would be looking at your notes, and that is the TRAP strategy. So one of the things I like to start with when I'm teaching the TRAP strategy is thinking, what are the prerequisites to using the TRAP strategy? One is that students have to be able to read, and somewhat fluently. If they're not able to read fluently, it's less likely that they're able to understand. But then beyond that, it's making sure that they understand what main ideas are, what details are. That also helps guide your instructions. So if you're going to take notes, when you're taking notes, you're not going to write the full sentence down. And then once you've taken those notes, how do you take a second to then ultimately process, or that paraphrasing step? And then you have learned, believe it or not, all these things that are in this paragraph. So now I'm going to think, what is this next paragraph going to be about? So you've done the T, or the think part of TRAP, and you're ready to go with those next 3 steps and so on until you're all the way through a passage.
Once again, SRSD modeling, or think aloud, is noted as SRSD's secret sauce.
It might feel like they're doing more than they have to, but that goes back to my quote about if you just build that fence, you're not going to chase the sheep. So build the fence, do more think alouds maybe than you think you have to. It doesn't have to be a full one, but maybe 2 minutes of kind of metacognitive, like how did you know to do that? Why is it important you do that? Model that. And then move towards scaffolding very carefully into short passages first when they're doing it on their own. And then maybe you're helping them take the notes and they're using your notes to paraphrase. And scaffolding so that you're not overwhelming them as they're learning it. Maybe it takes 2 weeks, but at the end of that 2 weeks, you'll have a student who feels successful. And that's actually a big part of strategy instruction for me, is that you're changing a student's mindset about how they see themselves as a learner. And that takes time. You don't get to change that in 5 days. So it's really the time and effort that teachers have to put in to make this work.
Finally, we end each Mentor Series episode with a SRSD success story. This one is from SRSD Research Assistant Aslhey Barkel.
Before we started any instruction, we did a pre-assessment to kind of see where the students were, and we gave them a source text and a prompt, and it was just a 1-page source text, and we asked them to write an opinion essay based on the prompt. And we found that some students didn't write anything or wrote a sentence along the lines of, I'm not sure what an opinion essay is, or I'm not sure what you're asking me to do. To other students that would just write maybe 1 to 2 sentences based on the prompt, is TV good for you? They might say, I love TV, it's cool. So you might see very generic, not a lot of detail. And then after the instruction, it was amazing because the students were actually looking for their own reasons and explanations, and then were able to use the source text to pull ideas out, and even in some cases add to their ideas. So they may have came up with a reason on their own but found an explanation in the informational text that went along with it. So it was neat to see them putting those pieces together and then being able to articulate what made a good persuasive essay, and then being able to include facts along with their own ideas.
That'll do it for this episode of the SRSD Mentor Series, sponsored by SRSD Online and Writing to Learn. I'm your host, Randy Barth, and until next time, please share, like, and subscribe. And as always, send this link to as many friends who want to change students' lives forever.